This is a great view from up here. Wow. You guys are beautiful. Up until now, it's been a pretty good conference so far. So, my name is James. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, James. Really happy to be here tonight. I brought some smart water with me. I hope it's going to kick in here pretty quick. I guess you have that in St. Louis, don't you? Smart water. Okay. Just out of curiosity of who's in the audience tonight, how many people here have sponsees? Just show of hands. Fantastic. How many have sponsees that are with them tonight? Fantastic. I brought one with me. He's sitting right over here. I brought him. I don't like to leave home without one. A while back, I went to a conference and I had some problems with the flight connections, and I was afraid that I was not going to get to my destination in time. And I texted my host and asked him what to do. And he texted me back, read page 449 and go to a meeting. So I knew I was in good hands. And I feel like I'm in good hands here tonight with you. So I've only talked for a minute or so, and I've already said maybe the two most important things I'm going to say. The best way to stay sober is to have intensively work with another alcoholic, which I think means have sponsees. And if you have a problem, there's a spiritual solution to it. But I'm going to spend an hour talking anyway, but I wanted to get those two things out of the way. And I got to thinking about this smart water, and I was wondering, looking back at my drinking, I was thinking, wouldn't it have been great if there was something called smart whiskey, where you go into a store, you go into a liquor store, and you can get a bottle of smart whiskey, and you know what you're going to be drinking. You're going to be able to take some notes and figure out all the problems of the world, and maybe be able to read them the next morning. I don't know, but you can't do that because whiskey is not labeled really well. You never know what you're going to get. Sometimes you get dial-in whiskey, when you call people up in the middle of the night and don't want to hear from you, or you get puking and going to jail whiskey, or you get fighting whiskey. I didn't fight much, but I went to a couple of beatings. But something called Plucking Whiskey, that story in the back of the book where you're at the bar nursing the drink and you get plucked magically away to some place of power and prestige. I love that stuff. But you never know when you go to the liquor store if you're going to get it or not because there's no labeling. Or that stuff called traveling whiskey. You ever have that? You wake up at some strange place with some strange person. I thought it was a girl. I really did. I was very drunk, okay? That's kind of fifth step. I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit. But that kind of covers my drinking. I never knew what I was going to get, but I ended up getting a lot of that stuff called incomprehensible demoralization. That's where my drinking took me. But that's not the only problem I have. I got something called a thinking problem. And you ever seen those 20 questions for drinking? You ever answered them for your thinking? You got problems at home because of your thinking? You like to think alone? Yeah.
They say they can't hear you in the back. Raise this up, maybe.
I heard a story recently. I heard somebody at a meeting recently. It was a cute little story about the person had a little hamster in their brain, and it was like this hamster was in a cage and spinning around. Like, that would be really nice because I've got a shit-slinging monkey in my head. I do. So I need help. I'm the kind of guy that I need some help. So I have a sponsor. I'm on my second sponsor now. My first sponsor was a woman. I didn't know at the time that was could be controversial, but I had a woman sponsor named Donna. And she was my sponsor for 18 years. And she was a heavy smoker. And the last thing I remember Donna telling me before she died is, sobriety is no fun when you can't breathe. Now I have a sponsor named Jack. And Jack retired recently from being an air traffic controller. And I retired recently from working at the Department of Corrections. Corrections and control. Jack and I have issues. I also have a sobriety date. It's the only one I've ever had. And it's December the 6th, 1982. I'll be coming up on 32 years. I heard it said to clap for an alcoholic who quits drinking is like clapping for a cowboy with hemorrhoids who stops riding his horse. And I've also heard it said is that either you change or your sobriety will change. And I believe that I've changed. I know that I've changed. I'm not the same person that came to you 31 years ago. And that's kind of our theme of the conference, is the courage to change. I don't know if it was the desperation to change or the courage to change, but I've changed because I've done the things that you did, that you told me that you did. And I'm very grateful that they work for me like they work for you. And if you're new here, this is a lot like, this works for everybody who works it. It's like, I'll guarantee that it'll work for you. It's like gravity. Gravity works for everybody. It doesn't like let some people down, it lets everybody down. And the laws of nature, the spiritual laws that we deal with here work for everybody. So I hope that you have the opportunity to find that out for yourself. So my sobriety date is the last time I smoked pot. I know this is Alcoholics Anonymous, but I smoked a lot of pot. Anybody else? We got any other pot smokers here? That was a trick question. Do we have any other ex-pot smokers here? Okay. In case you don't know, we don't smoke marijuana in Alcoholics Anonymous. I hear a lot of talk about singleness of purpose in AA. And to me, that doesn't mean that we did other things than alcohol. It means that we have a common solution. And we treat our alcoholism here. And, I got to a point in my life where I'm not sure that I wanted to quit drinking, but I wanted to quit having the consequences of my drinking. But I hadn't found you yet. I didn't know how to quit drinking. So the best thing I could come up with is I smoke marijuana. Non-addictively. Before I got out of bed in the morning. And I happened to be a gardener. And I had shopping bags full of this stuff. In fact, when I did get sober, I gave what I had left over to a friend of mine, and I helped him reach his bottom. You just sell it. But, and during the time I've been in AA, I've heard a lot of stories about people that did things to try to either control or stop drinking. I've heard of people that joined the army so they'd help them with their drinking. Or, we'll hear about that tomorrow night maybe. Or people that got out of the army to help them with their drinking. Or they got married to help them with their drinking. Or I got a sponsee. You can't make this stuff up. He joined Amway to help him with his drinking. It didn't work, by the way. So I get to AA and I start meeting start to meet you. And I meet a lot of what I think are like strange people. Like there was a guy named Boxcar Bill, and Bicycle Tony, and SWAT Team Ron, and Certified Pat. He had papers. He was a certified alcoholic. Dumpster Don. And you got names like that around here. You got a guy named Big Show sitting in the front row here. And I just met Happy Howard a minute ago. So I'm thinking, how in the world are these people going to help me? Whoa. I was like baffled. Because when I got to AA, I wasn't an alcoholic. I hadn't even had a drink for, I don't know how long it was, but I hadn't had a drink for over a year when I arrived here. And so I'm introducing myself as an existentialist. We got any existentialists here? Yeah. It's like, I wasn't an alcoholic, but I wonder why was I going to these Alcoholic Anonymous meetings if I wasn't alcoholic? And I guess I wasn't too tight to figure that out, but there was something going on in the meetings that kept drawing me to the meetings. And I kept coming back, and I kept coming back. And I know now what it was. I felt love. I felt love here like I'd never felt before. And one day, surprised even to me, I raised my hand and said I was alcoholic. So what happened to me is I caught this disease from you guys. This is contagious. So if you're here and you're not alcoholic, don't sit next to me because I'll try to give you a case of it. I really will. Because I heard a guy speak who said you can't change something you can't name. I knew there was something wrong with me. There was something really wrong with me. And I didn't know what it was. And I found out by coming to AA, I found out the name of what's wrong with me. It's called alcoholism. I have alcoholism. I didn't want it. I didn't ask for it, but I have it. And I didn't know how to treat it until I found you. I treated it with alcohol, and that just didn't work very well. So, and I thought, this book that we have here, this blue book, I thought there must be some references in it to marijuana, because it seems to me like marijuana is a fairly big problem with people in AA. So I'm digging around in the book, and I'm trying to find something. And one day I discover it. It's buried in the book. It's on page 1. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier who caught his death drinking small cold beer. The good soldier is ne'er forgot whether he died by musket or by pot. So I'm going to meetings, and somebody tells me, you got an allergy. You're going to have to go to meetings for the rest of your life. Really? I got an allergy. Rest of my life. And I got to thinking about that, and I thought, my dad had an allergy to bananas. He didn't go to BA. There's no such thing as BA that I know of. He had a bad reaction to bananas, and he quit eating them. I have this bad reaction to alcohol, and I keep drinking it. And you understand that because you do that too. And see, alcohol is not like bananas. I don't think bananas talk to people the way alcohol talked to me. Alcohol talked to me, and it used my own voice. And it kept telling me that it was okay to have another drink for all the reasons that we know about. That, have another drink. It's okay. And I kept going back to something that was causing me more and more problems. So I needed to be in AA. But I brought a lot of resistance with me. And I remember one time there was this kind of an old timer, you know how they are, and they come poke you in the chest and they say, hey kid. I was a 39-year-old bachelor when I got sober, so I wasn't really a kid. They say, hey kid, you reading the book? I said, I don't really like that book that much. I don't even know a Mr. Brown. Are you doing those steps? I don't really like your 12 commandments. You got a sponsor? No, I'll handle it. I'll do it myself. I got it. You praying? I don't really believe in God. You meditating? No, my head's way too busy for that. I hear meeting makers make it. That's what I was doing, going to meetings. Then he asked me the kicker. He says, well, how's it going? Well, it wasn't going that good. I think there's a window of time between coming here and working this program. And there's a little bit of a time when not drinking is kind of fun because it's so different. But it wears off after a little while. And I was at that place where I had to do something I had to do something. I wasn't doing anything. And I went to see a guy named Howard, as it turns out. And we have a Howard in our area, and he happens to be a really happy alcoholic as well. And for the first time that I can remember, I told another person the truth about myself. And I cried in his office for like an hour. I'd been to psychiatrists before, and I'd been to some counselors and things like that, but I'd always lied to them. And I told Howard the truth. And my drinking was I'd characterize it as being secretive and sleazy. I had like a daytime image and a nighttime persona. I'm in the book. It's like, find yourself in the book. I'm all over that book. I'm very well described there. The loneliness of the alcoholic, I'm in there in that. And the double life that I led. And at the end of the hour, Howard got out a piece of paper and he wrote prescription at the top. Get on your knees and pray. And he gave me that. I gave him $50. It was like a $50 fifth step with no fourth step. And I got a number from Howard of Donna. And I called Donna and asked her to be my sponsor. And Donna said she would be my sponsor if I'd go to 4 meetings a week, if I write it in a journal and share my journal with her once a week, and if I work the steps. And I agreed to do that. And I also started to do what Howard suggested that I do. I started to ask God for help. And I didn't even believe in God. But that's not apparently a requirement. I said, God, what do you want me to do? And give me the power to do it, which I read the literature. That's what it says in the literature. And I would say thank you at night. And then at the same time, I made this connection with Donna. And I did that for a fairly short period of time, and I felt good. And it was like I was doing something that made no sense to me. I didn't really believe in it, and it was working in my life. So I found out from that my opinion doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I think. Don't ask me what I think of this stuff. It doesn't matter what I think. It's what I do. So at that time, I had an alcoholic truck. I haven't seen any out here, but you know what they look like? Cracked windshield, springs are coming up the seat, ball tires, somebody else's tags on the back. The door panel's a different color. And I bought a brand new sports car. My life was starting to get a little better, and I bought a new car. And I hadn't had a date for about 5 years, so I was looking for a date. And I started going to a lot of meetings. I was trolling. And I don't know if anybody's planning on using AA as a dating service, but I'll say the odds are very good, but the goods are very odd. Present company included. So I meet this lady at a meeting, and she says, step outside and I'll try to work you into my story. So I start seeing Donna, and I started working this program. And I go back to the beginning. They have little numbers in front for people that went to college. And I started at step 1. And I look back at my life and my drinking, and it was real clear to me that when I took a drink, I couldn't stop, or I didn't want to stop, or I couldn't stop even when I wanted to stop. And that because I didn't understand this or couldn't come to grips with this, my life had become unmanageable. My life, I had thought that when I got to you that I'd ruined my life because I had tried to manage it when I couldn't because I was powerless over alcohol. And I had one experiment that I tried. I used to come up with some tests to make sure that I wasn't alcoholic. I didn't even know what an alcoholic was, but I didn't want to be one. And I had this one test it was my best test that I ever did. I decided to go 30 days without a drink. Because I know an alcoholic couldn't do that. That would be impossible for what I thought an alcoholic was. So I go 30 days without a drink. And I have a drink at lunchtime, have a glass of wine to celebrate not drinking for 30 days. And I was in jail at midnight that night. So, and I call it step 1, part B, that my life is unmanageable. And one of the things that I do because of that is I don't ask the question why. Why is a management question? I'm not in management. I'm in footwork. So the question I ask myself is, what am I going to do about it? For me, that's a good question. I'm an alcoholic. What am I going to do about it? Not why I'm an alcoholic. And I have this visual. I picture God has a circus. And I work at the circus. And I have a bucket and a shovel. And I don't get to decide how many elephants are in the parade. I just clean them up. Step 2, we all have stories that we have crazy stories that we did when we were drinking. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of crazy stories this weekend. I got a few myself. But the craziest thing I realized I ever did is I took another drink. Sober. That's crazy. I'm nuts because I keep picking up another drink. So I need to be restored to sanity. I spent about 15 years working in the prison system, and during that time I was a teacher. I taught landscaping. I'm an old pot grower teaching landscaping. I mean, God has a sense of humor. And so I have students. I have inmates. Maybe half of my students were in there for murder, and I had 30 of them. And I spent a lot of time with them. I got to know them. I was with them every day. They had me as their teacher all day, every day, until they moved on to something else or they completed the program. And I asked them, every one of them over a 15-year period, if they'd ever been in AA. And as you could well imagine, most of them had. AA is well known in the prison system. I asked them some more questions. I said, have you ever had a sponsor in AA? Have you ever worked the steps in AA? Have you ever had a service commitment in AA? Have you ever had more than 1 year of sobriety in AA? And during that 15-year period, probably 25 guys said yes to all those questions. I asked them one more question. What are you doing in prison? What was their answer? Do you know what their answer was? I stopped going to meetings. So what I see is, if I go to meetings to find out what happens to people that don't go to meetings, because when you stop going to the meetings, you go crazy. Because you have to go crazy to pick up a drink if you've been restored to sanity. So I don't want to go crazy. So I'm here with you tonight. So that doesn't happen to me. Step 3. I get to step 3. I go to my sponsor and says, I'm done. It's as far as I can go. I don't believe in God. And again, apparently it's not a requirement. And I said, AA is so full of contradictions. This stuff doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to anybody with any kind of, I don't know, who went to college or something. She said, what are you talking about? I said, well, I go to the meetings and there's a sign on the wall that says, think, think, think. I look in the book and it says, the problem is in your mind. Well, someone else says, let go, and somebody else says, hang in there. You have these paradoxes. You have to give it away to keep it. Tell that to your bank manager. You have to surrender to win. I've got a couple of friends who are in the military. You have to surrender to win. That doesn't make any sense. You have to die to be born again. Don't worry, it's only suggestions. And the book says there's like 100 and something musts in the book. It doesn't make any sense. And, in one page in the book it says, God could and would if he were sought. On the page before that it says, may you find him now. You have to find him or you can just look for him. Or it's in 2 sentences in a row it says, there is one who has all power. That one is God. The sentence before that it says alcohol. Remember alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Well, how can alcohol be powerful if God is powerful? I think about that stuff. Join us on the broad highway. The road narrows. Don't forget. Taking the trip, not taking the trip. If you can't remember your last drink, you haven't had it. Book says you won't remember the misery and suffering from a week ago. Don't get in any relationships the first year, but get a sponsor and tell them all your shit. Don't make any major decisions the first year, but turn your will and your life over to the care of God. That's a major decision. And my favorite one, half measures avail us nothing. You'll be amazed before you're halfway through. So then my sponsor says to me, well, are there any contradictions in your life? I got to thinking about that. And, I just graduated from UCLA and I was taking a trip in Europe. And I had a little money for a little while and I ran out of money pretty quickly. And I had a friend wire me $200. And I got the money like at noon. And I woke up the next morning and I was broke. And I had to stay in a shelter that night, and they sprayed me with this lice spray. And it's like, that was a real contradiction between who I thought I was and, what alcohol had done to me. And it's like, and there's a line in the book about it, in a lot of ways we're normal except when it comes to alcohol. And I thought, I've never gone into a grocery store and said, hey, can I buy everybody a loaf of bread? But I did, when I had alcohol, I did that. I played the big shot. I had $200 in Europe in 1960. That's a lot of money. And I guess I spent it all. I don't know what I did. I got drunk and it was gone. I still had 9 more years of drinking after that. So what I did is I looked at that step again and I concentrated on the word decision. I made a decision to work the AA program. I didn't have a relationship with this power at that time. I knew there was a power. At that point, I had a sense that there was something going on in the room, that there was something powerful happening here, and that I could plug into that. I didn't really believe in it too much, but I knew it was available to me because of what you told me that had happened in your life. And it's like electricity. There's plugs all over the room. I don't have to understand electricity. I just have to plug into it. And when I make a connection with it, it works for me. So I made a decision to work steps 4 through 9, which is really the AA program. So I get to 4, and I didn't launch into it like the book says. I kind of fiddled around for quite a while. But I ended up doing the best inventory that I could do. And I had hated my father for many, many years. He was the designated problem in our family. He's an alcoholic. And I put his name at the top of a piece of paper, and I started to write about the feelings I had about him. I started to cry. And something came over me that day, and some healing happened inside of me where I sensed, the book talks about that we understand that some of the people in our lives are spiritually sick. And that I stopped hating him that day when I was doing my inventory. And I eventually went out, inventory done. My sponsor and I went out to this place where I had been growing pot. And we did our 5th step there. And on the way out there, I guess there was a lot of trash that had been knocked over. This is out in the country. It was kind of a rainy November day. And my sponsor was saying something about she was seeing trash and she needed to change her attitude because she was kind of focusing on that. And I do my 5th step, and I kind of dump this garbage can of my life out and expose myself to somebody. And on the way back, we saw a rainbow. It was a really powerful experience for me of being connected to this power. And the book talks about that. There's a lot of promises that happen to us when we do the 5th step. And they happen to me, just like you said that they would happen. So it touched me deeply, and I had a real sense that day that I was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous because I was doing what you did. It really got me excited about sobriety. And then 6 and 7, I was like, oh, this is easy. It's like a little paragraph. And I said, I got this. But at that same time, I met this lady in AA, and we got married. And she had a couple kids. So I got to be a husband and a father on the same day. And I don't know how to do these things. But I'm doing these inventories. And in the inventories, I'm finding out that I'm a fault finder. I find fault in what you do, and I push you out of my life. I had done that with everybody. I ended up, my best thinking before I got to AA is I had this little piece of property where I was growing pot, and I wanted to put a fence around it with barbed wire on the top and keep everybody away from my pot and my wine and just kind of give myself to my addiction. And I was shitting in a bucket because I didn't have any plumbing. That's where I had ended up. And I realized, working in the penal system later on, is the worst punishment we have in America is called solitary confinement. That's the worst thing we do to a person. We put them by themselves. That's what I did to myself in my disease. My disease took me to that place where I was just left with me because I had pushed everybody out of my life. And now I'm married and have children. And I don't want to be that person anymore. And I'm asking this power to help me. And I'm identifying my defects. And what I started to do, I had 2 children. I had a 7-year-old daughter, Angela, and a 13-year-old boy, Sean, and a wife named Betty. And I wanted to learn how to do this. And so I started treating them like you treated me when I came to AA. I started treating them like newcomers. So I started being kind to them, and I wrote Angela's old notes about how much I was happy to be her father. And prior to that, I used to sometimes drive home, and I get to my driveway, I'd be so mad I had to turn around and go to my sponsor's house because she had a dog from hell, a Dalmatian, and it's like I knew there was going to be problems when I got out of my truck. And my sponsor said, just step over it. Just love her. Your job is to love her. And nobody could do the dishes right. They just couldn't do them right. So I started doing the dishes. And I have this internationally accepted standard way in my head of doing everything. So I'm going to show you how to do everything. And so I'd stand at the sink, and I'd want to do the dishes peacefully. I didn't want to do them with resentment and anger. I want to do them peacefully. I'd just stand there until I could actually just do the dishes. And I like to garden, so my hands are always dirty, so it worked out good. I still do it. I like doing the dishes. Doing the dishes is very spiritual if you're just doing the dishes. I read someplace there's over 60 ways to do the dishes. I thought there was one. There's only one way to do this, my way. So, Angela, who's 7, many years later, and I'm doing this now on a consistent basis. I'm changing. I'm asking God for help. I'm asking your help, and I'm learning from people. And I complained to my sponsor about they're not listening to what I'm saying. And she says, "Don't worry about that. They're watching what you do. Worry about that." And so I start doing better. And many years later, Angela comes and asks me to walk her down the aisle. I'm the stepdad, and I get to walk her down the aisle. And when I was at the wedding, I got to write the checks for that wedding too. And when at the wedding, her biological father came up to me and thanked me for raising his daughter. You taught me how to do that. I don't know how to do that. I'm a fault finder. Now, Sean, who was 13, I didn't know this, but he was just getting into his disease. It's a family disease. And I was around 5 years sober, and he had permission from Betty to borrow my car. And I call that my sobriety car because it was the nicest outward manifestation of my success in changing my life in AA. So this sobriety car was really important to me. And Sean got drunk and smashed my car. I was not very spiritual about it. I was angry. And some Al-Anon people came to our house. They do house calls. Al-Anon does house calls where I live. And one of the women said to me, she said, I'm complaining about my car. I'm not thinking about Sean being locked up in jail and his passenger's almost dead in a coma. I'm just worried about, very self-centered. And she says to me, well, maybe it's not your sobriety car. Maybe it's Sean's sobriety car. That was his last drink. He was 17 years old, and he will celebrate 27 years of sobriety in a couple of months. You don't have to get old first to get sober, and there's a lot of young people here tonight, and that's really exciting to see, too. And he married a girl who got sober when she's 16, and they both have master's degrees. They have fabulous jobs. The disease of alcoholism is progressive, but recovery is progressive, too. I can see where Betty and I were better parents than our parents were, and Sean and Angela are both better parents than we were. The disease of alcoholism and recovery from it is progressive. And so we're all getting better in our family. And there was a lot of sickness in our family before. I made my list in 8, which is pretty easy. I travel around a lot. I lived in Europe. I lived in New Zealand. I lived in New York. And a lot of ships passing in the night. But I'm really willing to make right anything that I did to harm somebody in my path. But mostly it was my mom and dad that were primary on my list. And my mom especially, because I was a neat kid. I could have been a contender. I had a lot of, and it's like alcohol gave me wings, and then it took the sky away. It just destroyed all my dreams and ambitions, and all my mother's too. And I got to be a good son with her the last 5 years of her life. And she died when I had 5 years of sobriety. That was a tough year for me. The first thing that happened was that Betty's sister, she only had one sibling, was killed in a car accident. And she had 3 children in the car with her, one of whom was paralyzed, and is still paralyzed to this day. And he's in prison for drug addiction. He was 5 years old at that time. And then my mother died, and then Sean smashed my car. That was all in a 6-month period. And at that time, I was in the middle of AA. And you surrounded me with your love, and you protected me in a way that I couldn't even imagine getting through those things without being with you. And so my dad, I made amends to him, and many years later, he came and lived with me. He was in a place in his life where he wasn't doing well, and he moved into my home, and I loved him, and he could have stayed forever He was invited to stay forever. And he lasted about 30 days. He got mad at some very insignificant thing that happened, and he says, I'm out of here. And he left and died a very lonely man. He was a fault finder too. And he never was able to come and embrace this program. But the men that touch my heart the most are, in a way, they're silly, but they touched me deeply. One was for $5 and one was for $10. The $10 one, I had gotten too much change at a restaurant I used to go to at lunch. And I always thought, well, you can't count. It's not my job to teach you. And I just put it in my pocket. But I knew it wasn't right. And I was also the secretary of a step study meeting on Wednesdays. And I knew I was trying to work this program. And I go to the restaurant like the next week. And the woman says she's going to sell the restaurant. And I'm thinking, if I'm going to make this right, I got to do it today. So I asked her to step aside, and I had $10, and I handed it to her, and I says, I got this in change too much the other day, and I want to give it back. And she says, are you serious? And I said, lady, I would not be giving you this back if I wasn't serious. And I started to cry. And it was the best $10 high I ever had. And it gave me some courage to pay back the IRS. Which was more than $10. And a student loan. The $5 amend, I get a call from Sean. He goes we live in Northern California. He goes to San Diego to go to school. And he has a couple of years of sobriety at this point. And he told me he'd been stealing money from me and he wanted to pay it back. And he sent me $5. And I was so excited about that because I know we read how it works. And then we read the traditions, which is why it works. And then we go back to step 9, that's when it works. When you do step 9 in this program, it really comes alive. And I was so excited for Sean for wanting to be honest with me and send me that $5 that I sent him back $100. And because I had a good job at the time. And a little while passes and another $5 comes. And and then I sent him another $100. And all of a sudden the 5s come really fast. Step 10, I think, if I was to pick one, I'd pick 10 as my favorite step. Because my whole life, as I was pointing my finger at you, is you were the problem. And what I learned in AA is if you're the problem, there's no solution for me. You can't be the problem. I can't get well if you're the problem. I'm the problem. It's me and my attitudes that's the problem. And there's a couple of my favorite lines in the literature which weren't my favorite lines when I first heard them. One is in one of the stories, and where it says, I need to concentrate not what's wrong with the world, what's wrong with me and my attitudes. It's not the Lutherans, it's the fault. It's not the Nazis. It's not the Iraqis. It's not the Democrats. It's not the Republicans. It's me. I'm the problem. The other line is, I need to quiet the disturbance inside of me. It's a spiritual axiom. When I'm disturbed, there's something wrong with me. And I have the tools now to be able to quiet that disturbance. I love a story that Buddha says. He used to complain a lot about stubbing his toe because he was walking around barefoot all the time. And he says, wouldn't it be great if there was enough cows in the world, just cover the whole earth with cowhide, make it smooth. And he knew there weren't enough, so he wrapped his feet in leather, and the whole world changed. And outside here, down at the corner, there's a light, and it goes green, yellow, red, green, yellow, red. It's doing it right now. Every traffic light in America is going green, yellow, red. Well, I get up to it, and I have an agenda. I want it to be green. I don't want it to be red. But I need to change my mind about that. It's like change your mind, change your life. It's much more than just a bumper sticker. And it's like I can change my mind about that light. I know a guy that when he gets up to a red light, he thanks God for his sobriety. He has a different view of the light. Or somebody else told me a story once where they close their eyes for just a moment and try to get in touch with their higher power. Someone will always let you know when the light's green. One of the tricks that I've used is to get, it's about bringing myself present. And I close my eyes and I breathe in saying, let go. And I breathe out saying, let God. You want to try it. It works pretty good. You just kind of close your eyes for a second and breathe in. And breathe out. Let go. Let God. And when I do that a couple times, when I'm disturbed, it really helps me. And I was trying to think of a story of when I was really disturbed, and I came up with what I think was a good one for me, is while I was working in this prison, I lost a scissors. And it was a steel scissors about this long. It would make 2 beautiful shanks. It was steel. And if that scissors had ended up in somebody's neck, I'd have been the accessory to a murder. And I did a lot of that day. I did a lot of, let go, let God. Hundreds of times I did it that day. And that day there was probably 90 people, maybe 100 people were looking for that scissors. They shut the prison down, and there was like 60 teachers and correctional officers and captains and lieutenants, and everybody scoured my classroom looking for that scissors and couldn't find it. I mean, we swarmed that place, could not find it. The next day my students came back, and right outside my office my clerk sat, and he pulled out a piece of paper out of a drawer, and the scissors plopped on the table. Now, is that odd or is that God? I don't know. But that scissors showed up again. And I guess this works. I can quiet the disturbance inside of me. 11, I've come to have a relationship with this power as a result of being with you the time that I have and being actively involved. And for me, it's a lot about bringing myself to this precious moment, right here, right now. That's where the power is. That's what I've learned by being here. The power is right here. The weight does not power the boat. The past does not exist. It's only if you're in the past, you're doing it in the present moment. You're thinking about the past in this present moment. You're losing yourself of the moment. And the same thing with the future. So for me, it's about paying attention. And I love it. In California, we have a lot of topic discussion meetings. And every meeting that I go to, in the middle of the meeting, someone will say, well, what's the topic? And I always say, it's paying attention. Yeah. That's the topic. And I've got it kind of narrowed down to about 3 prayers that I like a lot. One of them is help. It's a very good prayer. Another one is thanks. Excellent prayer. And the third one is wow. So those are my 3 prayers. 12, as a result of working this program, I make an effort to practice these principles in my affairs. I have not missed my exit on the freeway. We have freeways. I don't know what you call them here, highways or whatever they are. I've not missed my exit on the highway for a long time when I'm trying to chase down somebody. I teach them how to drive. I don't count how many items you have in your basket at the grocery store, usually. And if I see paper, I pick it up. I've changed. And I try to carry this message. I worked in the prison system. I also taught a DUI class for a long time. And Steve and I have a hobby of, it's called Pass It On. We make our own CD labels, and we give away CDs of speakers. And when I was working in the prison system, I had a long commute to work, and I like to listen to I'd get 2 meetings a day, one on the way to work, one on the way home, when I was listening to CDs. And I bring them into the prison, because a lot of guys in prison want sobriety, but they don't know how to get it. And they get a lot of hope by hearing a good message. And another thing that we like to do is call people on their birthday. So what I'd like to do this weekend is if I could call you on your birthday, I'd really like to do that. So I have a book. Steve has a book. You put your sobriety date and phone number in there. We'll call you on your birthday. If you want to call me on my birthday, it's December the 6th. My number is 530-368-2447. So, but the most important thing to me about step 12 is I have woken up. I was spiritually dead when I got to you. I was like a walking dead person. And I woke up. And what I see my awakening is mostly how I was wrong. And looking back, when I had that 30-day test where I proved I wasn't alcoholic, I actually proved I was alcoholic that day. And I thought when I came to AA that this was brainwashing. Well, it turns out my brain needed a good scrub. And, I was afraid that you would turn me into something that I wouldn't like. I'd already done that. I hated myself. And then I was wrong about God. I thought God was not for me. And I mean, the power of God, the power of the Creator, of the mystery of life, it's like I depend on that power. I was wrong about the book. That's a fabulous book. There's a couple of pages there where Bill Wilson, he nails alcoholism like it is a fabulous book. I was wrong about you. I told you what I thought about you before. You're fabulous. I mean, the people. I love people in AA. I was wrong about the steps. The steps are my step. I thought it was like you're going to punish me somehow or something. It was my road to freedom, to be okay in my own skin. I thought I couldn't trust you. I couldn't trust myself. I thought I wasn't getting enough love. I wasn't giving enough love. I found out that if I want something in my life, I have to give it away. I give my sobriety away and I have more sobriety. I give my love away, I have more love. I give my money away, I have more money. I give my time away, I have more time. I had it all backwards. I was wrong about gratitude. I thought I had two piles. I had I don't like that shit. And then, I like this, okay. But what happened is I didn't know what pile to put stuff in. I had alcoholism in the bad pile. Well, that's probably one of the best things that ever happened to me because I get to be with you. So I had that all wrong. So I'm glad, and I don't know what else I'm still wrong about. So I need to still keep coming back here to find out what I still don't know. And, in the book someplace it says the best is still to come. I really believe that. But during the time that I've been sober and watching the passing parade and watching the people that struggle with this, I kind of view sobriety like it's an escalator. There's an escalator, and the escalator is going down, and I'm on the escalator, but I want to go up. So I need to keep moving. If I don't keep moving, I'm going to go down. If you're coasting in AA, you're going down. You're heading towards a drink if you're coasting. I want to go up. So what I wanted to kind of share with you is what I think it looks like when somebody works the steps backwards. I've worked them forwards for you. I want to share about working them backwards. 12. It's a dog-eat-dog world. I'm going to get mine before you get it because there's not enough to go around. 11. I got a prayer. Me, more, now, amen. I take inventory, your inventory. I don't see how you stay sober working the program you're working. I got a list. It's a shit list. Oh, wait, I missed 9. I'm not going to do 9. Skip 9. I'm not paying the money back. I'm not doing 9. 8. I got a shit list. Your name's on it. 7. Humility's not one of my faults, but that's the one I'd choose if I had a fault. 6. I like that song by Frank Sinatra, I Did It My Way. 5. I'm not copying anything even if you have pictures. 4. I can never get a break. It's like there's this shit fairy that follows me around. It's always dumping on my head. I'm so unlucky. If I fell into a barrel of tits, I'd come out sucking my thumb. Three. Turn my will over to God? What if he messes up my life? I'm not going to do that. 2. Thank you for all the information you've given me about the inner workings of my mind. I'm sure that I can handle this myself now. 1. I'm not too sure I was alcoholic. I might have just been really thirsty. And I think I'm going to try some fine wine. Well, I told you what happens to me when I take a drink. Click, click. When they put handcuffs on you, they're saying you can't even be trusted with your own hands. You go to jail. They say, empty your pockets, sir. I keep my money with my coin. On my coin it says, to thine own self be true. I don't need that anymore. I lied to myself. I'll be lying to myself so soon I will not need that. I will not have any money either because they go together with me. Sobriety, no sobriety, no money. Car keys. There's a little camel on there. The camel starts to stay on its knees and does 24 hours without a drink. Don't need that. Driver's license, that's going to go. Credit cards, I didn't have any of those when I got sober. I won't have any of those again anyway. My ring, I would take that off, but I gained about 20 pounds when I quit smoking. Make it 40 pounds when I quit smoking. 10 pounds since I came to St. Louis. I'll start smoking again, so I'll be able to get that off in no time. Oh, I didn't have a phone. There were no phones when I got sober, but there's a picture of my granddaughter. I won't be able to see her again. She's a real pistol. I've got a coin I carry in my pocket. I seek strength not to be greater than my brother, but to fight my greatest enemy, myself. That's only the outside stuff, but what you've given me inside, that will all go if I take a drink. That will all go. The quiet mind that I've been able to get by being sober and working this program. And I think a gentle heart that I have. I didn't have those when I came to you. Everything good in my life is a result of being with you in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm not going to give that up for a drink. Lately I've been doing some reading about how do you grow spiritually? What do you do to grow spiritually? And what does that look like? And I've in several places that I've looked, I see the same thing. And what I see people saying is to be kind to each other. The best thing we can do is be kind to one another. If you can't be kind to us, I hope you can be kind to yourself. Because if you can be kind for yourself, you can't help but be kind to us. That's how the world works. Thank you.